This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granic Allen. Artificial intelligence is transforming the global economy, and for many Canadians, that raises an obvious concern. Will AI replace jobs? But what if the bigger story is that AI will create an enormous demand for workers, not behind keyboards, but on construction sites, in electrical rooms, and across the skilled trades that build and power the technology itself? Around the world, billions of dollars are being invested in AI infrastructure, particularly the massive data centers that require vast amounts of electricity, land, and skilled labor to build and maintain. Canada has many of those ingredients really ready to go: abundant energy, cool climate, and a highly trained workforce. But attracting those investments will depend on whether we can move quickly enough and address the growing shortages in those skilled trades. So today on Counterpoint, I'm going to be interviewing Gwyn Morgan, who's the founding CEO of Encana Corporation and a longtime Canadian business leader, and also the author of this C2C journal piece, The Hands-On Future: Skilled Trades, Data Centers, and Canada's Big AI Opportunity. Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, again, as I echoing what I've said in my opener, when people hear and speak of AI, artificial intelligence, immediately people start panicking and like, oh, the jobs will be replaced. They're going to take over my job. Is my job being threatened? But you're making the opposite argument that AI could instead create a boom for skilled trades. Can you explain that, please?
Well, let me start at the other side of it, which is that AI is killing lots of jobs and a lot more to come. The unit holders of this business have laid off tens of thousands of people because they don't need them anymore. And this is one of the impacts of AI. The jobs that used to be in demand, like computer scientists, are all like programming and so on, as computer scientists used to do, are now being done by AI. So they're being displaced. There's a huge displacement going on, and then of course, what isn't happening is, the other side of it is that there's going to be a whole bunch of other jobs created, as you said.
Wow. So why? I mean, I've heard so much about these data centers, and to be quite frank, at the beginning, it was really just focused on AI and the technology. But now, in many Canadians' vernacular, it's these data centers, and we're hearing how they're such an important part, of course, of the AI of their critical economy. Um, and there have been some criticisms of where they're built. But why should Canadians care about where they're built? Like, are there pros to having them built certain places and cons in other places?
Well, it's remarkable. I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, I spent my part of my career fighting the fact that us people in the oil and gas business weren't such bad people, because we produce something that's being needed. But now, what being needed even more is the natural gas to run these huge data centers. I mean, there's one in Grand Prairie, Alberta, that occupies something like 80 sections of land, and it's going to cost $70 billion, just one data center in Alberta. And they use natural gas because these data centers are really electricity hungry. It
Yes.
takes a huge, it's amazing, when you go into AI and you ask for something, at some point in some place, whether in the US or Canada or even in China, something clicks into these big data centers to try and answer all the questions. But that process is so uh, electricity intensive that it creates a huge amount of heat. And then they have to be cooled, which needs air conditioning. And so the combination of cooling them and supplying the energy to them is fantastically large.
Absolutely. And this is perhaps what gives Canada a natural advantage, because we tend to have a cooler climate, especially in the northern communities, like, well, Grand Prairie sort of ish for one.
Yeah, the cooler, of course, it is in the climate, the better, and the closer availability to the supplies, which you need water and you need natural gas, and the parts of Alberta like Grand Prairie certainly have that.
Okay. Well, we're going to continue this conversation on AI and how the data centers could actually be further booming our economy and provide jobs that maybe perhaps they're displacing. So we're going to pick that up in just a few moments. Welcome back to Counterpoint. I'm joined by Gwyn Morgan, who's the C2C journal author, as we discuss the positives or the potential job opportunities for Canada if data centers continue to be built here. We already have a few that are in development. What that could mean for our skilled workforce, our labor force. Gwyn, in the previous segment, we spoke about how Canada's natural environment perhaps lends to being more hospitable for these data centers. We have a cooler climate. We have a lot of we have a lot of water, which is required for these centers. What else do we have that gives us that edge over other countries when these corporations are looking where to locate these data centers?
Well, of course, we have lots of natural gas, but I guess the fact that we have these wide open areas and we got lots of energy and gas and so on is a big factor, and that's why they want to put these data centers there. But the question is then, as we talked about earlier, there's a huge amount of job displacement. And one of the things I talked about in my article is what about the jobs that are created? And that's one of the things that when we looked at what's happened, if you're if you graduated in computer science, as I said earlier, you plan on having a good career, and actually you ended up with a dead end. You're just totally useless degree. And not only that, tens of thousands of people with those degrees are being laid off. So where do you go? And so what I would say to young people is go to areas which are not being impacted by AI. And that means things that have to be done in person. Doctors, dentists, other medical people, and a whole bunch of other things. You have to go to see them, and they have to come to see you, are not going to go away because they're required physically to be there. And another big one, where we also have a large shortage of, and there's huge opportunities, is the skilled trades, the people that build everything from houses to almost everything that you use every day is produced by skilled trades or serviced by trades. If something goes wrong with your air conditioner, who do you call? You call a person who's an expert in that, and that takes a physical presence. So what I'm saying is that jobs that need a physical presence have a huge future. Jobs that depend on AI don't have a future.
Now, we've seen, at least in this province of Ontario, and again, a third of the country lives here, there has been a demand for more skilled trades. And it seems that Canadians cannot keep up with the demand. So, we have greater immigration, bringing in more skilled trades. My father in the 60s was an immigrant from Europe, and, he picked up trades when he got here, or he was a tradesman. And obviously there was a big construction boom during then. Now we see from different parts of the world, we have more of this. Will this mean that we will have to have more immigration to Canada in the skilled trade sector? Or do you think Canadians who are used to being in a white-collar job and who are now rendered unemployable because AI has taken over their job, they will be able to pivot to skilled trades?
Well, I don't think they'll have any choice, really, and that's why these the trades people like the Camosun College out here in Vancouver Island have a huge demand, and they need to expand fast. One really interesting thing about this that's sort of personal, but my wife founded something called Women in Trades,
Mm-hmm.
and it provides support and for women who normally aren't. There's a lot of women who want to be tradespeople, and they're great tradespeople, but they have other humans. Unlike most men, they have things like families and other issues that prevent them, and we help fund those people through our foundation to go to school to take trades, and this Women in Trades program has become huge, and it's fascinating. So what we have to do is access the available people,
Mm-hmm.
and then women are a lot of them, and then it also keeps supporting and expanding trade schools generally.
So do you think the kind of the mantra that used to hold true, which is like, basically, you want to be successful, you better earn a university degree, is that sort of being shelved, and really we've been undervaluing the trades, or we need to place greater value on trades going forward?
Well, there'd be huge value in trades because, as I said, uh, I mean, there's still going to be lots of needs for people with university degrees. As I said, doctors, dentists, and all kinds of other areas where veterinarians, architects, engineers, of course, as I am, and accountants and so on. There's still going to be huge demand for those people, and so that is going to continue. But those are, again, most of those jobs, all of those jobs are
Hmm.
people are things that you do in person. You don't
Right.
do them through cyberspace. So I would say the jobs are where you do things in person. Oh,
Okay, great. We'll be right back in just a few moments. Welcome back to Counterpoint. I'm joined by Gwyn Morgan, C2C journal author, as we discuss Canada's path forward with AI data centers. We have many Canadians who are concerned about their overall consumption of energy and use of land and how AI will be displacing many jobs. But as Gwyn points out in his journal piece, there's actually an opportunity for a skilled trade boom and an opportunity for many construction booms with these AI data centers as Canada natural topography and our weather, really in particular, and our abundance of natural gas could really help out with these data centers. So, Gwyn, just further on that, let's talk about the Canada's energy policy. Oh, who doesn't want to talk about that? So, we know these facilities require a great amount of energy. They consume a lot. We've discussed this in the first segment. Is Canada's current energy policy helping us seize this opportunity, or is it really just standing in the way?
well, another reason why Alberta is a popular place to do this is because uh, the the trade centers, the data centers that need all this energy being located in Alberta, they don't have to ask the federal government about that. They don't have to build a pipeline like we're having all the time doing. So the Alberta controls whether or not the data centers are built, not the federal government, and that's a huge factor.
Right. Absolutely. So, all these negotiations we see between Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Daniel Smith about we need to get our energy out, Europe, Asia, they all want our energy. We're blockaded in the West, blockaded in the East. Well, hold on, let's have the data center in Alberta. We can just distribute it how we want. We don't have to worry about pipelines in other provinces anymore. It could be a quick solution for the energy abundance of Alberta.
Well, it's a solution, and we still need oil pipelines.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
oil is the other half of Alberta's economy, so we still need those, and they'll have to be built, and of course that's a whole other subject that is a difficult one because Carney thinks that if you move oil, you should somehow balance out the effect of emissions, and it's an impossibility.
So let's shift gears to other parts of the world. Where else besides Canada are a lot of these data centers, their owners of these data centers eyeing for the construction of them?
Well, about 25% of them are in China, and then almost maybe a third of the other is in the United States. But the U.S. is also having a heck of a problem with the number of them and the location of them, and also, as we said earlier, their climate isn't as suitable as it is as Alberta is for them. So the data center operators are really looking at moving their businesses north, if I could put it that way.
Okay, so what is Canada jumping on this, or are we hesitating?
I don't think we're hesitating. I think that you look at these projects that are already underway in Alberta and even Saskatchewan are moving forward. But here's another here's another issue here. We need to build all these data centers, and we need electricians, and we need uh,
Mm.
constructors, and so on. And that's now going to be the big limitation.
Wow. So do you think perhaps the government may develop greater policy? I mean, I think we already have some kind of immigration policy where we're trying to attract more skilled trades, obviously homegrown, but also from foreign lands. Do you think Canada ought to again, incentivize foreigners with skilled trades to come here, maybe fast path them to citizenship as an incentive.
Well, for years in my writings and other activities, I've encouraged the fact that we need to get more people that are skilled, and our immigration program has done the opposite. If you look at the Canadian immigration program, we brought in people that need help rather than can help, and that's a big problem. We have to switch that around.
Right. So when we come back in our next segment, we're going to talk about what success looks like when we bring in the AI centers and what we think our federal government could be doing to further incentivize or just to attract the owners of these data centers to build here. If this is going to be a big economic boom for our country, then perhaps we need to be looking more aggressively. We'll be right back in just a few moments. Welcome back to Counterpoint. I'm joined by Gwyn Morgan as we wrap up our conversation on AI data centers and why Canada has become such an attractive place for these data centers to be built. Gwyn, thanks again for joining me. We have heard many complaints, yes, in Canada, but also south of the border in the United States, where, as you mentioned, about a third of data centers are built there, where communities are protesting the building of these data centers, be it for like consumption of energy or natural resources, also just the sheer volume or footprint these data centers occupy on land. So what would your response be to Canadians who have those kinds of concerns? Like, how would one balance like those, legitimate concerns with, well, here is how your community will benefit in the long run?
Well, it is a valid concern. I mean, and so location is everything. Uh, but even in Grand Prairie, Alberta, there's people, which is a fairly less inhabited place and lower population. There's people who are against them. But it's always a question of balance and trade-offs. And so what has to be done is to put them in the combination of the least uh, sort of environmentally and physically and damaging or destructive area to have them, or disruptive, I should say,
Mhm.
and also balancing again where you have all of the resources like natural gas and water. So I think that this is everything. The reality is that no matter what you build, if we were building natural gas processing plants, we say we face the same issues around the neighbors. But ultimately, people have to move forward and they have to understand where the jobs and where it's happening. And so, if they're properly placed and they're well managed, I think there's a lot of places we could put them in Canada.
And it could be quite the solution for communities that seem to have dying out, losing, the youth or the young adults to larger urban centers where, maybe a more remote community, a rural community wants to bring jobs back and keep that history, keep the tradition going. And perhaps, a remotely located data center abutting the community could be a solution to allow people to live on their lands and, work not too far away.
Well, the reality is that our cities are usually we're getting higher and higher costs, higher and higher density population, and fewer jobs that like this high quality jobs. So that means a big change in mindset for people, for young people especially. Will I move to Grand Prairie, Alberta, or not? But I think that ultimately these are the decisions that have to be made, and when it comes right down to it, those people that used to think they were going to make a job in programming computers have to
Mm.
look at a whole different future.
Absolutely. I mean, people will go where the jobs are, right? This is kind of what history has taught us all the time. When there's the gold rush, you went up north, right? You went out west and north. It's sort of how it works. So, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have to see. I mean, again, we may see more decentralization from the urban centers where people will live. And, we have such a large landscape and a very uninhabited landscape in Canada. So, who knows? We could see some demographic shifts across the country. So, if you were advising Prime Minister Mark Carney today, what are like a couple of decisions that you would make or you'd urge the government to make to ensure that Canada doesn't miss out on what you refer to as a once in a generation opportunity?
Well, I would say to do everything possible to at least facilitate and maybe in some ways not get in the way of change, and to understand that with his pa- tremendous focus on emissions from burning anything, including natural gas, he has to look realistically at the impact of the people in the country and where those young people are going to get jobs. And they're not going to be in the traditional IT business.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today. Really insightful and interesting perspective on this that I hadn't thought of. So I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to suggest a topic for the show, feel free to reach out via X at Granic Allen or via the Newsform website. This has been Counterpoint. Thanks for watching.